I'm Big Don Luca, smoke you like my hookah. Pump fake right, then I step back in illusion. That's a boss move maneuver, billionaire entrepreneur. Mark Cuban on the viewer, put you rookies on a skewer. I stay shitting on you boys like I came up from the sewer. Used to have a lot of dollars, now I got a lot fewer. What you saying to me? I hope you save it for me. I'm about to kill the game, and I put it in my testimony.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Mainstream Mavs podcast. This is your host, Will. And in today's episode, we have a very exciting special guest joining me and Jaren. We talk with our editor-in-chief and site expert over at the Smoking Cuban, the website that me and Jaren are writing for in terms of our Dallas Mavericks coverage, Noah Weber, and he was a great guest. He gave a lot of great insight in terms of just his fandom with the Mavericks, as well as what he thinks in regards to the future implications of the team this upcoming season. It was a great interview. Really privileged to have Noah coming along the podcast, and we'd love to have him back. Hopefully he is willing to join us for another interview. It was one of our better episodes I think we've done. I think you guys will thoroughly enjoy listening to it. We really do appreciate it. Make sure to check out our work over at the Smoking Cuban. You can find me, Noah, Jaren over there at the Smoking Cuban, Will Miller, Jaren Boslow, Noah Weber. You can also find, all the, stuff is in regards to our podcast up on Twitter, at Mainstream Mavs Podcast, Mainstream Mavs Podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. We really appreciate any feedback that you guys could give us. And we, really appreciate you guys following along for this journey. It means a lot that, we're able to talk basketball in this capacity and have some Mavs fans join us for our journey. We really do appreciate you guys. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and go to the ad break. Here's an ad from our sponsor, Spotify for Podcasters, and then you guys can enjoy the interview with Jaren, Noah, and I. Y'all have a good one. Hi, welcome back to the Mainstream Mavs podcast. This is your host, Will. I'm joined here with my co-host, Jaren.
What is up, guys?
As we told you guys in the intro, we are joined here by site expert over where we are contributors at the Smoking Cuban, Noah Weber. We are honored to have him on the podcast today. Noah, how are you doing?
What's up, y'all? Thanks for having me on. I'm doing good.
No, most definitely. So I guess before we just get into the Mavericks and their sort of state of affairs at the moment, how have things been going for you lately, man? And what was your journey like in terms of becoming a Mavericks fan? Because anytime we bring a guest on here, that's obviously like one of the questions we always have to ask.
Yeah, so everything's been going good. As y'all know, we're doing really good over at the Smoking Cuban. We're consistently in the top two for the division over at Fanside. It's us and the Warriors-based site, so we're doing really good over there, and it's a big part of y'all's hard work as well, so I appreciate that. And I started as a Mavs fan. I can't say I remember the 06 finals. I was like 6, but I was a fan. I have whatever Dirk jerseys from back in the day, but I really started getting into it probably around the 2010, 2011 when they won the finals, and then going on the dog days of Dirk's career, consistently getting bounced in the first round, going to tons of games. My grandpa had season tickets, so we'd probably go to 30 plus home games a year, so almost every game. And yeah, and that just led me. I loved, we'd go early and interact with the players and whatnot. And that led me I want to work in sports. So I went to college at Oklahoma State to graduate with sports media. And then I've been working in sports ever since I graduated in May.
Oh, nice. No, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
What's up. But yeah, Jaren and I definitely, we're not, as plugged into the Mavericks really till after 2011, I'd say. And because we're only 10 years old. So anytime we get a chance to talk with anybody from that was a fan before that, it's always some valuable insight because we're kind of blanking on those years. So given that, you started becoming a Mavs fan back in, 2006, 2007, whatever. What is, Dirk meant to you? And is he your favorite athlete growing up and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, of course. He's king of Dallas. There's no one like him. Just the way he treated the fans. He brought Dallas their first ring with virtually I'm not going to say no help. That's a whole different conversation. But just a veteran-filled team against the star-studded Heat. Just there's not you will not hear anyone say a bad thing about Dirk. And that's what I really love about him. Just the way he gives back to the city, always had a smile on his face. When he could have gone and played in Houston or LA for a lot more money, stayed here, wanted to be loyal. And just that ring is worth so much. Like one of the hardest finals runs of all time. Yeah, just watching Dirk growing up, it was just amazing. No one had seen a 7-footer that can play like that, and just spectacular. There's no one that will ever be like Dirk. I think he's arguably one of the greatest athletes in Dallas history. So gotta love Dirk for sure.
Yeah, and to follow up with that, I guess now that we're on the subject of Dirk, what if you have a favorite moment? I know that there's probably plenty of favorite moments, but if you have one particular favorite moment, what would it be?
It would be the 2011 Finals win for sure.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
Crazy, man. Like beating the Heat, everyone was counting them out before the series, and just the Mavs played together, and just crazy, just veteran run team, just Jason Kidd knocking down standstill threes, like barely could move. It was just one of the most fun, because us Dallas sports fans, like we don't see championship runs, like not really, like the Stars in 2020 or whatever it was, but the Mavs 2011 finals win is all we really have. So, I mean, it's awesome. The 2011 finals win, nothing touches it. So,
yeah, I mean, this is the first time that like all 4 major Dallas sports teams are I guess, in contention to maybe win a championship at the same time. So I think that's cool, even though it probably won't happen. But nonetheless, Noah, you obviously did you get your start covering the Mavs over at the Smoking Cuban during last season, or was it right before the offseason started? Just because
so I think it was February. I think
Okay.
I literally started within 2 weeks after they traded for Kyrie. So I started back in February.
All right. So just in your time since you started covering the team over there, and the Mavericks made that midseason Kyrie deal, what sort of I guess what was the vibe that you left with after last season, and the disappointing finish? And did you have higher expectations for this team, given the whole Christian Wood situation last year and all of that, or what was it a little bit of a shell shock to you when they underperformed?
Yeah, it was definitely disappointing, because everyone counted them as finals contenders, just trading for Kyrie, but just their defense wasn't good before they made the trade, and it was even worse after. It was really disappointing, I will say, because Kyrie and Luka just electric. Like we'd see games against like Philly or Sacramento where just they go nuts. And like that Sacramento game at the end of the year, they won just for them to like tank the final 2 games of the year. But I will say the weirdest moment I've ever been a part of, just talk about disappointment, is I was in that presser against the Bulls when Kidd admitted to tanking. I was like, it was the weirdest thing ever, because if you're tanking, you don't say it. That's just a known fact. You don't say it. And we're sitting there, and he's talking about Luka probably playing, like barely playing. And he was like, yeah, we don't have, I can't remember who's all sitting, like Seawood, Josh Green. Like he was just listing a long list of all the role players that weren't playing. And it was just the weirdest thing, because I was like, is he really doing this? Like everyone had a feeling that they might be tanking, but he's sitting there telling the media that he's tanking. And I was just like, obviously they got fined for that. They could have kept quiet about it. They might have still gotten fined, because it was obvious they rest so many players. But like, does Nico not talk to Kidd and say, hey man, we're like, it was weird. It was one of the weirdest things I've been a part of, because the Mavs don't tank. It's not really necessarily in their DNA. Yes, they had a lot of down years like before Luka where they were probably tanking, but just when you have Luka and Kyrie on the roster, it was just really weird to see them tank. Am I glad they tanked? Absolutely, because
yeah, that was about to be my follow-up question. Is those last 2 games, were you in the boat of being in favor of that? Because I know me and Will, we clearly were. We wouldn't say it out loud as it was happening, obviously, but we were definitely fans of what was happening.
But I do think that there's a very like rigid dichotomy between let's full-fledged, we need to tank all season to get the top 10 pick, versus like when you are mathematically already eliminated from the playoffs. If you are subtly tanking, not saying it in press releases, then at the end of the day, It's not near as bad. So, but I do respect definitely. I think both of the fan opinions on both ends of that spectrum, because for those that season ticket holders and people who are like truly diehards and may have just like wanted to take their kids to a game or something like that. It is disappointing when you maybe had that game penciled in all season and nobody's playing or anything like that. So I can definitely see both sides, but I think that we can, all three of us can agree that, the Mavericks doing what they did those last two games has unequivocally benefited them as they head into next season. And, just to piggyback off of that, some of the offseason moves that they've made so far, Noah, who are you most excited for out of all the additions that the Mavericks have accrued over this past offseason? What's one name that sticks out to you personally?
Man, I gotta say, I think Seth Curry is gonna be so big than most people realize. Like, man, he's a top 10 shooter ever, percentage-wise. Like, Curry coming off the bench is gonna be really nice. But if I had to say most excited about, I think I'm super excited about both rookies. I think Derek Lively will be the starting center within 2 or 3 seasons. Yeah, I think it's gonna take him a minute, but I'm super excited because they've just starting center has been such a low priority. Like, even starting bigs next to Dirk, other than Tyson Chandler, man, it's been no one. Like, if you look at the starting bigs since Tyson left for the second time, it's horrible. It's bad. It's really bad. And like starting DP continuously, that's just not the move. And I think finally having a rim protector in Derek Lively, great size. I mean, he's super awesome. And I mean, super great with the media. He seems happy to be here. It's good to get those guys who seem like, because regardless of the people who think Mavs culture or whatever is stupid, they overvalue it. Like, Derek Lively is definitely Mavs culture. And same thing with Omax. And Omax is going to play a bunch next year, I feel like. So I'm super excited, I'd say, about both rookies. They might not play as much as most people want, but they're going to be huge down the line.
Yeah, I think, kind of conversely with that, I think Derek Jones Jr., I think him and Omax are going to have a fun little minutes battle, per se. I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
I think, that's going to be definitely something fun to watch coming off the bench. If you had to pick, especially right now due to Omax being a rookie, but if you had to pick one, simply just because Omax is young, like, who would it be? Like Derek Jones Jr., I know he hasn't had the biggest role throughout his NBA career, but also Omax is a rookie. Like, it was a big, 50-50 thing that you can pull from here. I simply, I guess, who do you trust more with that? I guess it's rather going to be like a off the bench role, but still, who do you trust more?
We got to see how Omax does in the preseason. He looked really good in summer league, though. Just the way he moves for his size is just nuts. Like, he's so long, but his game it's pretty smooth. And I don't know if his off the game dribble is going to translate immediately, but I'll say Derek Jones Jr. just for now. Cause I mean, they can just throw him in there and tell him to guard. I mean, he's 6'5" or whatever, his massive wingspan. He's really underrated defender. Cause like, if you look, he was playing like 15 minutes a game in Chicago, but he made his impact felt on defense. And just, he's super, from what I understand, just reading stuff of what he said when he was in Chicago, he's just super bought in to his role, whatever that may be. And I mean, he's just going to come in and guard, hopefully be able to knock down an occasional three. But I'll say trust right now for Derek Jones Jr., but I think the sky is the limit for Omax. So I can't decide who I think is going to be playing more, because I think Omax could be playing a decent amount. Like, he's gonna have a role on this team. Like, if you can guard, you're gonna have a role on the Mavs, because as y'all know, our defense is not the best. Hopefully improve though.
Yeah, I mean, the Omax stuff is very intriguing. I got a chance to watch him for a little bit at summer league, and I'll say as much as that, the single dribble blow-bys and the offensive creation were much better than you would have expected. Just given that he only came out of Marquette, and I think that kind of sold him short a little bit. And I think he was also a junior. I think that some of those pre-draft labels definitely were a little bit unfair, because I mean, ever since, all we've heard is good things about him. He had a great NBA combine. I think he was, I don't know if it was the Rico Hines runs, but I know he was at some run recently, and I believe it was a NBA scout or something on another team said that they thought he was a veteran. They didn't even know he was a rookie playing out there. And then they were shocked afterwards that he was playing. So, I mean, I do think, between him and Lively, obviously Derek Lively, I think has more potential at the end because, he does, fit that prototypical modern NBA, rim protector. And if he can ever polish up the jump shot to where it's even a threat in any capacity, I mean, that's like a very scary type of player that I don't know if Omax just has those sort of measurables, but I mean, he's a guy that, could potentially come in day one and, be in this rotation just, strictly at a need, like we said, because the Mavericks, are so thin in terms of their perimeter defense, if we're basing this off of last season. So I think he can be an immediate guy that you can, plug and play off the bench. But obviously the biggest question with him is if the 3-point shot, how real is it, right? If it's able to come into fruition, enough to where he's starting, I mean, that would be tremendous, but we'll just have to see how that goes. Obviously the Mavericks' biggest free agent acquisition, barring, what they did in the draft and everything, was Grant Williams in the sign trade. What are your thoughts on Grant Williams heading to Dallas? It seems like it's the first time in a couple off seasons where they've got a free agent that they were actually rumored to have been in play with. It seems like a lot of these times the Mavericks are, deploying smoke screens and we don't, they end up doing something different from what's reported. But he had been a target before free agency. We had the reporting up on the Smoking Cuban and everything, and then they actually go and get him. But what do you think he's going to bring to the roster next year?
He's going to bring defense. He's going to bring toughness. And I think he's going to bring some leadership, even though he is 24 years old. I think he's going to lead a little bit. I think that, he's obviously going to be starting there at the 4. He's going to take those tougher defensive matchups down low that we haven't been the best at handling the Mavs. Just obviously that's not a strength of theirs. And hopefully he can rebound a little bit too, because obviously Mavs rebounding is not the best. But I think just what they brought him in to do is play defense, just be a 3-and-D player. So I'm pretty excited about what he's going to bring, but I'm not super confident that he's going to contribute as much as people think. Because if you look at him in Boston, he was fifth best player on the team. I'd have to go look back at the roster, but tons of guys on that team better than him. And now people in Dallas expecting him to be the 3rd, 4th best player on the team. So hopefully he can contribute, and I hope they're just not going to ask him to do more than he needs to do. But when you have Luka and Kyrie on the court, he's going to get plenty of open looks. So I was definitely excited about it because, as you were saying, oftentimes it's just like, ooh, Mavs are showing interest in blank. But this offseason, if you look at who they were rumored to show interest in, a lot of the time it was true. Like, DJJ, that stuff was going around for a while. And then same thing with Grant and Matisse. So I think a lot of the leaks that were coming out that they were interested in, they were pursuing. So I think Grant does well though, but they still need more, and that's a whole nother conversation.
No, for sure. Grant, like I think a lot of Mavs fans are, expecting maybe this expansive offensive repertoire. Grant is a great defender. Don't get me wrong, but he's a guy that still needs to evolve quite a bit. He hasn't had, being off the bench in Boston, he hasn't really had the biggest opportunity to, attack off of closeouts and play make and do some of those things that are maybe not stereotypical of that tried and true 3-and-D wing. And that was kind of the problem a little bit with the Mavericks last season, with Reggie, especially when Dorian had gone out the window after the trade deadline. There was just not enough, creation from that wing spot. And they've addressed that to an extent this offseason especially from the defensive perspective. But it'll be interesting to see. I'm kind of, just when you scan across the roster, I feel like one guy is going to pop a little bit more than, we would expect. We saw it last year with Josh Green, and to see who that guy this year is going to be, really intriguing. Obviously the Mavs are international right now, some of them at least, with the FIBA World Cup, and Dante Exum, Josh Green are doing work over there for the Australian national team. Obviously Luka with Slovenia is, having some insane performances at the moment. But specifically with them, do you think that, whether it's Dante Exum or Josh Green or any of these guys taking a leap, or any of the guys that we just got out over the offseason, how much would that mean to the Mavericks? Because I mean, as currently slated, I think they bolstered their defense a lot, but I still, given how much some of the other teams in the West have improved this offseason, it still doesn't, necessarily seem as if a playoff spot is guaranteed. Maybe I'd say it's likely, but it's not guaranteed. So how big would that be if they could make, if one of these guys ends up, being a lot better than we expected?
Yeah, Josh Green taking a leap would be huge because, I mean, Dallas is counting on it. So he's obviously eligible for an extension now. Next year, he'd become a restricted free agent if Dallas doesn't get him into an extension now. But I think they might go. I can't decide if I think they're going to extend him or not, or make him prove it, and then maybe figure something out later down the line. I can't decide what I think yet. But Josh Green taking a leap is going to be huge because oftentimes in these seasons, we see two forms of Josh Green. It's the really good, confident, reliable shooter Josh Green, like we saw when I think it was when Luka and Kyrie were out that game where him and Hardy had like almost 60 points combined or something crazy. There's times when Josh Green is a capable shooter. He's confident. He attacks closeouts. And then there's times like in the 2022 playoffs, he's not playing much. Rudy Gobert is daring him to shoot from downtown. He's not shooting. There's two forms of Josh Green that we've seen, and I'm really hoping that the Mavs get the form of Josh Green, that he's taken a leap. Because I mean, people forget how good of like a passer he is. Like Josh Green has developed a lot since coming into the NBA, and he gets a lot of flack from Mavs fans. And I will say I don't agree with just the Mavs fans that think that his ceiling is just through the roof. I'm not necessarily in that boat. I think that he can improve a lot and be a quality starting shooting guard wing in the NBA. I do. I think he can be that, but I'm not on the boat that, he can go average 20 a game one day. I just don't see that happening. I think that he can be a great role player for this team, but I think him taking a leap would be huge just because, I mean, he can guard and he shot 40% from three last season. Like that's the most you can ask for. He's super athletic. He guards well. So I'm hoping Josh Green can take a leap. And then Exum, I think more is going to be resting on Exum than people realize. Because like with the whole last summer, like we still have Frank thing after losing JB and stuff, and Frank just being an absolute disaster. Like Exum is our like point guard off the bench. Like he's a true one that we can have off the bench. I don't know how much he's going to play, but if he can be good, that's going to be massive because yes, losing Reggie in the Grant deal was worth it, getting Grant in here, but people don't realize how much of the defensive responsibility that Reggie took for guards on the court. And like, if you look at the squad off the bench and we're going to say, okay, who's going to guard the guards? Who? Seth, THJ, I'm just Jaden Hardy, like all three of those guys not known for their defense. Exum, great defender. So hopefully just Exum can play good defense, take care of the ball. I mean, I don't think he's going to be asked a whole lot, but Exum playing good would be massive for this team just because they need more guard defenders. I think that's one thing that I wish they addressed a little bit more. And Derek Jones can guard guards. I mean, he's versatile, but I think that the Mavericks guards are just all kind of those flamethrower type scorer players like Luka, Kyrie, Hardy, THJ. They're mostly just Seth Curry, just guys who are going to score a whole bunch. So hopefully Exum can help on the defensive end. That's just, if he can just play good defense, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of piggyback off that, like this team has gotten so much more creative, so much more athletic just in one offseason. I mean, last year, there really wasn't any players other than kind of Josh Green in terms of role players last year that did multiple things, defense, offense. Reggie was the definition of one dimensionality. So I think this year, the fact that they got Grant Williams, DJJ, Dante Exum, Omax, like Derek Lively, like they got so many guys that are going to contribute not only to an athletic perspective, but defense to offense, and do multiple things on offense. I think, you know, as you said, with Dante Exum, I expect him to potentially be that number one guy, or not number one guy, but potentially be that point guard off the bench. And to see him kind of flourish in that role would be honestly really, you know, creative. But I don't know. To me, the Josh Green situation kind of sounds all too familiar with the Jalen Brunson situation. A guy who hasn't necessarily flourished throughout his career, had some spurts last year, but headed into this year has had a, you know, pretty good offseason thus far. And, you know, is looking to have big things heading into a contract year. You know, does that Jalen Brunson thing sour you anymore? Like, if you were Nico Harrison, for instance, would you just go ahead and get the deal done at that 4-year, $50 million mark? Or, you know, would you wait for that prove it kind of thing? I don't know. Like, if you were in Nico Harrison's seat, like, what would you do with Josh Green right now?
I don't know. It got to depend on what that extension's looking like. But the big difference between JG and Brunson is that JB was unrestricted, which is like, that does not happen. Like, getting those 4-year deals with being an unrestricted free agent at the end of it, that's not as common. And that's something that the Mavs should have, just looking back on it, I'm sure they wish too that they did. Just
no, I mean, it was Donnie Nelson. He, I think kind of as a token of gratitude or appreciation, for, you know, getting Brunson in Dallas, you know, from the standpoint that they valued him and touted him as a prospect a lot higher than, I believe, you know, first pick of the second round or wherever they got him, you know. They thought he was a legitimate first round pick, and they, you know, wanted to show the respect to Brunson. And that's why they handed him that, you know, that 4-year deal. But because he was a second round picked, I guess the ramifications of the contract kind of, you know, when you read in between the lines, showed that, you know, he'd still be an unrestricted free agent after year 4, versus normally when you're given that 4-year rookie contract, like you said, Noah, you'll be a restricted free agent after the 4th year. So, you know, obviously, you know, it's, I get where they were coming from a little bit, but, you know, there's no free handouts in the NBA, you know, that's something I'm definitely kind of appreciative. You know, when we're looking at the old regime versus the new regime, right? In the old regime, you know, they seem like they kind of gravitated towards just doing the nicest thing almost at times. Like, I remember when Rick went to the Pacers, actually, apparently we, just in sort of the fashion that he did it, we could have easily potentially got a pick in that year's draft back from that. I remember that was like a kind of a story at the time, and that we didn't end up, you know, choosing to exercise that. So, you know, we do need a little bit of that ruthlessness in the front office, but you know, as well as, you know, that relatability that Nico's brought, you know, having, you know, knowing all these guys, the ex-Nike stuff. How do you think Nico's done in his first couple seasons as the Mavs GM so far?
Yeah, it's totally different vibe from Donnie Nelson, the way that he ran the team, totally different vibe. And Nico makes win now moves. And I think I like his moves a lot better than they were with Donnie. Just the move in the middle of the 2022 season, the Dinwiddie trade, when we got rid of KP and we got Dinwiddie, and I'm so blank. Yeah, when we traded with the Wizards and we got Dinwiddie and Bertans. Yeah, obviously Bertans, regardless, he had that huge game in the Phoenix series. I can't remember the exact style line, but Bertans had his moments when, looking back on it last year, he was almost unplayable. It's just not very good. But turning KP and to Dinwiddie and Bertans, like, that was huge. Like, Dinwiddie was massive for us in the playoffs, and Dallas made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals with that squad, and they just, like Cuban said on that podcast earlier, they all knew their role. And I think Nico is collaborating with Cuban and Kidd, and they're really all a trio of just making moves work together, and really bonding and teaming up well together. I like what Nico has built so far, and especially the Kyrie trade, regardless of what people think. Should Dallas have done that? Should Dallas have not? But what people have to understand is that Dallas's failure to sign players in free agency has just been crazy. crazy. They can never land the big fish free agent. And that's what the situation they would have been in. They would have had a ton more cap, but having Kyrie, just have him play half a season, see how it works. It didn't go as well as they wanted to, but Kyrie was bought into the fact that that trade was for the long term pretty soon into it. Like he knew it was for the long term before he'd even re-signed. Like all signs were pointing to Kyrie re-signing, regardless of what people thought might happen with the Lakers, or that Houston might pursue him if they couldn't land Van Vliet or Dylan Brooks or whatever it was. But yeah, I think I'm liking Nico's moves. I'm hoping that they pan out, and that I'm just hoping they can stay out of the play-in this year. That would be massive for them.
I think one thing with the front office, to kind of speak up on Nico Harrison and really the moves that they've made. This is the first season, as we talked about earlier, where they are making moves that were kind of rumored to be made. I think that's in large part to Nico Harrison and that front office, but I also think it's in large part to the fact that it seems like so far that that Mark Cuban has taken kind of a step back in his like sort of leadership or pick me kind of role that he has taken. I kind of want to just get your thoughts because I think we are all too familiar as Mavericks fans with Mark Cuban either saying some outlandish stuff or just making moves in general that are kind of questionable. It seems like at least it falls on his head, but what are your thoughts? I know this is a very broad question, but what are your thoughts on Mark Cuban and specifically like it seems like he's taken a step back this season, but what are your thoughts on him just in general?
Yeah. So we can talk about the more recent stuff with Mark Cuban. I haven't agreed much with the way that he's handled the whole Brunson situation. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Just talking about when the dad got involved and that's when things went downhill and this and that. Like if they're off their team and JB played his butt off, and good for him. Like if the contract that he got now, I'm sure Dallas is kicking themselves for not paying that money. Was he ever going to come back? You never know. All signs were pointing to him going to New York anyways. But I'm not necessarily liking the way that he's kind of speaking out against past players, because I know y'all saw what he said about the whole Seawood thing. Like he didn't say Christian Wood's name, but saying like when guys started playing for themselves and not playing their roles, and saying it had nothing to do with Luke and Kyrie. Like, man, Seawood's gone. He's not on a team right now. Like, why do you need to say that? Why talk down on a player that you traded a first and 4 players for? There's no reason to do so. And then just the stuff getting leaked about Jason Kidd never wanting Christian Wood in the first place. And just there's been so much flack against Seawood. Like, yes, was he disappointing on the defensive end? Absolutely. Absolutely. But he is so dynamic on offense, and he had a solid year offensively, whatever it was, 16, 17, whatever he averaged points, maybe 16.6. He is great offensively. Like Dallas giving him a veteran minimum deal, like I would not have minded that at all, because that's all he's really received from what I understand is interest at the veteran minimum level. Like I will say, if all the stuff about him buying into his role is not true, he obviously doesn't want to sign a vet min contract. He wants to have a big role, and his struggles on defense don't make him the best fit necessarily in Dallas, just because he gets lost off ball pretty often. And so half the time he didn't look like he wanted to play defense in the first place. But if Dallas could have signed him to a veteran minimum contract, and I mean, just had him come off the bench, like that would have been a solid bench piece. So I'll say that the thing that sticks out to me the most from Cuban this summer is just in this summer and going into the end of last season, is just the way he talked about his past players. That kind of rubs me the wrong way. I think that is not a good look for free agents, because like, what if you're thinking like, oh, is he just gonna throw me under the bus if I leave after 2 years type thing and my contract's up? So I'm not a big fan of the way that he's handled past players. I'll say that.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't. I'm very like kind of indifferent towards Mark Cuban, because there are like a lot of we have to recognize all the things that he has brought to the Mavericks. I mean, he's done great with all the Dirk commemoration stuff. He's obviously built this organization essentially from the ground up, where they were torn down to shreds in the 90s. But conversely, I would say what would definitely, if anything, kind of irks me is definitely, just sort of the PR of it all, like saying things that don't need to be said on podcasts and media appearances. And, we don't know exactly how big of his role is, behind the scenes. So that's not something, I guess we can elaborate, too much about. But, it's just not a good look. I remember a few years back, when he made the comments about Russell Westbrook during his MVP season, or was like maybe the season before that, and Kevin Durant at the playoffs, called Mark Cuban an idiot. Like, we don't want the player perception league wide of the Mavericks to be skewed, and we don't want guys to not want to come play here, because of things that the owner is saying. And that I think is the biggest drawing point in all of this, most definitely.
All right, so getting back into this one, I figure we kind of jump into some more, future segments. What do you think of the team in a few months? Or I guess in a few months. Like, what do you think? First off, let's ask big picture. What do you think the record will be for the 2023-24 NBA season for the Mavericks?
Ooh, okay. I think they'll win like 45 games.
Yep, that's what we said.
Yeah.
That's what we said.
Wait, are you serious?
That's what we said. Well, we said
44 and a half or something like that.
No, yeah, we put the people. I mean, obviously, like, we don't know what the exact record is going to be, but anytime anybody asks me to throw a record prediction in the air, I say 44-38.
Yeah. 45 is somewhere I just feel like is about right for this team. I mean, the West is so stacked. But I think that's about their median though. Like I could see them
I agree.
I could see them being close to a 50-win team, but things have to go, like Luka and Kyrie got to figure out their stuff in the clutch, and their role players have to step up, got to be better defensively and all that. So Dallas still doesn't have a starting center, so who knows what they're going to do there, but they did get to the Western Conference Finals with DP. So there's a lot to be found out. There's a lot to be found out soon. So we'll see.
No, I mean, and to follow up with that again, yes, the Mavericks are without a starting center, but I mean, it's very hard to predict game by game what's going to happen exactly, because again, there's just so many different things that can happen. But I think, whenever I was doing that deep dive into the Mavericks schedule, through at least the first 20 games, it's definitely a little bit more of a lighthearted start. The Mavericks do play Memphis 3 times, and that's 3 out of the 4 times without Ja Morant. And I think if the Mavericks, this has always been a big talking point since Jason Kidd really got here, was can the Mavericks make pretty much the start of the season or like, can they get off to a hot start? And I think if they're going to do it, it's going to be this year. I mean, how crucial is it that the Mavericks get off to a hot start? I know it's kind of a self-explanatory question, but especially with this, quote for quote weak schedule to start the season, like how crucial is it that the Mavericks get off to a hot start?
It's definitely crucial, because if they happen to crumble at the end of the year like they did last year, it makes it bearable, because if they have a bad start and then they crumble at the end of the year, they're going to be toast. But if they come out of the gates hot and then they struggle to end the year, it wouldn't be as tough, but it's going to be a totally different scenario. I mean, they traded for one of the most skilled players ever, and they were trying to get him to work next to Luka. And I mean, that's not easy to have such a new look on your team with Kyrie Irving and still make it work. So I think getting out of the gates hot is definitely crucial. So I'd say it's very crucial for this season they get out to the hot gates. Aren't they on the road? Am I wrong, or are they on a lot of road games at the beginning of the year?
They're on a lot of road games to begin the year, and I want to say post All-Star break during that 25 game stretch, they're on a lot of away games.
Yeah, I knew that. Much.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at this start of the season. So it's at San Antonio versus Brooklyn, at Memphis versus Chicago, at Denver versus Charlotte, at Orlando. Okay, so there's a lot of games in there that they should win, but the NBA it's so crazy.
Yeah, it's
there seems like no there's those first few games, there's no consecutive home or away games, just back and forth. So that'll be a hectic start. That's kind of opening week. All the scheduling is always kind of screwed up because you have to curate to the national TV games and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully they start off strong. But looking a little bit more big picture, kind of just treading in that direction as Jaren just did. Kyrie Irving is 31. Obviously, you know, the Mavericks made that deal for him where they traded him for Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian, the 29 first-round pick. We're able to re-sign him this offseason for that 3-year, $126 million contract. His contract obviously does have a player option in that third year. So, you know, we are only guaranteed, you know, 2 years here of Luka and Kyrie together in a Mavericks uniform. What are some of maybe your biggest existential fears as a Mavericks fan, whether it's, you know, potentially Luka leaving in a couple years because we don't have a good enough team. Maybe if it's not Luka leaving, you know, when Kyrie gets older or, you know, chooses to go elsewhere, what is the bridge going to look like to you know, bringing in that 1B or 2A type of player to pair alongside Luka, you know, once Kyrie's no longer that guy. What are some of, you know, your biggest you know, questions in your head when you're thinking long terms about the Mavs right now?
Definitely biggest question mark is keeping Luka happy. That's got to be their main focus. I think it is their main focus. But if the whole Kyrie thing doesn't work out, I mean, Luka, he's technically under contract. Does he have a player option after the 30?
He has a player option, I believe, in his last year, but he's technically under contract for three more seasons, I believe.
Okay, so
I think he's due. The earliest he could become a free agent, I think, that's if he declines that option, like I said. I think it would be the 2026-27 season, maybe the 25-26. I need to look that up for sure, though.
Okay, yeah, I just pulled it up. So he has 3 more guaranteed years and a player option after that third year.
Okay.
Which he'll undoubtedly opt out of, regardless if he's staying around, he'll opt out.
Yeah, because the money will be drastically different by then.
Yeah. It's they gotta. It's so hard to build, and because what if all this time they should have built around Luka like they built around like Giannis or something, bringing a bunch of guys that can defend, stretch the floor, versatile, not bring in another star player. What if Luka? I mean, I'm sure he wanted Kyrie and they consulted with him before they traded for Kyrie. But what if that's not necessarily what Luka wants? It's so hard because the Kyrie project is a fail and they can't make it to the Western Conference Finals, or at least because I mean Luka wants to win. He is so insanely good that if he goes elsewhere, he'll win wherever he is. He's that good. I think he can bring, like, the 2022 Western Conference Finals.
I mean, Slovenia shouldn't have beat Australia the other day.
No way. Luka's a winner. So they've got to win with. I think the biggest question mark is, how does Luka down? What if Dallas misses the playoffs this season? Does he request a trade in the summer?
That's a big question. I don't know. I could see it. I definitely think a lot of other NBA players would tend to try to go that direction. I don't want Mavericks fans to operate under the assumption that Luka is, you know, just completely devout and loyal to Dallas, because, you know, as is the trend with European superstars, you know, none of them have really made any, you know, drastic changes in terms of changing teams in their careers, you know, like with Dirk and Giannis specifically. And that's really all we have to work off of. But as more and more of these guys come in the NBA, I think that we're going to see that, you know, not all of them, you know, it's not like just some like big culture thing that, oh, everybody from Europe has to stay with one team. I think that, you know, we did just get really extremely lucky and fortunate with Dirk, and, you know, and the Bucks to an extent have got that with Giannis, right? But even him, there have been some sprinklings of him not necessarily being happy with the organization that Milwaukee's going. And, you know, you pose the question, you know, how would you, what's the best way to build a roster around Luka, you know, bringing up the Giannis thing and everything. Obviously, you know, with Giannis, they had Chris Middleton, they had some guys alongside him that they were able to develop and, you know, form into, you know, a competent organization. And then, you know, upon years of essentially saving in their draft assets, some of their young guys, you know, they cash everything in with that big Drew Holiday trade, and, you know, all of a sudden, you know, they're a contender. I do think, maybe the Mavericks situation is a little bit different because of how good Luka is early on. In Giannis's scenario, he was developing alongside these guys kind of as time went on, got a little bit better each year. I believe he even won most improved one year. With Luka, with him being so good right off the bat, it does, pose that question to the Mavericks front office, like, hey, like we do got to win now. And, they've even said that it took them aback a little how fast, Luka got good, but we've seen Dallas attempt to bring in, this, so-called, second star player alongside Luka twice now with Kristaps and Kyrie. And, I think we can both say, all of us here can say, Kyrie is a definitive, 1B type of guy. Like he's not he's not even a guy that's going to play, second fiddle to Luka. Like I almost see them, while Luka, yes, is probably better. I almost see them, kind of like last season, just almost splitting up the ball handling duties, and playmaking duties to an extent, because both of them are, so extremely dynamic. And whenever, either one of them's hot, and the other team's going to start trapping, they're going to have to look to the other guy, as an outlet of offense. But obviously, with the Mavericks having had that early success in Luka's career, they were forced to try and get good fast and capitalize upon his prime. That's obviously lasting longer than, Giannis's has per se. So I do think it will be, really interesting to see how they are able to fulfill, this guaranteed window of Luka and just how loyal he'll be to Dallas. All signs point towards him being extremely loyal. I mean, he just got engaged with his girlfriend of like 7 or 8 years. He's enjoying his time in Dallas. He just bought a house here. Like he does seem settled, but I mean, we can't be too preemptive in our assumptions. He very well, given another year or two of a losing season or disappointment within the Mavericks organization, there's no telling how that could, affect him in his career. And, with Luka and Kyrie's window right here, I do think it's, really interesting that we do only have 2 more guaranteed years of both of them on the team. What do you think? Do you think that, Kyrie's stay in Dallas is going to extend upon those 2 years? Or do you think that the Mavericks are going to have to look at, bringing in somebody else?
Yeah, it's all going to depend on it's just so hard to predict right now how well Kyrie does or doesn't play. If he plays well, I could fully see him staying, but I think that player option likely, just if the way that we're anticipating him playing, he'll opt out.
Yeah.
After that second year.
No, I would agree, but you also do need to factor in the age, with him, I think at the end of that contract, he'll be 33. So yeah, and maybe at that point if he's not going to be able to, get another max, I could see him exercising that, but it's all going to depend on like a lot of stuff, just how long he, ages with longevity. But, obviously I think everyone here can say that we definitely wish that they were paired together a little bit more, kind of synchronized within their timelines. But I agree with you.
Yeah. I'm really hoping it works out because Kyrie is so much fun to watch. Like the Mavericks haven't had a player that fun to watch other than Luka in a long time. Obviously Dirk, but Dirk over the back half of his career, I mean, still fun to watch and one stayed, but they weren't making it past the first round. Like Kyrie is universal. Like everyone loves Kyrie. Everyone loves Kyrie, and he's so fun to watch. And I mean, he's playing at super high level, even when he was here, regardless of how bad of a disaster the end of season was. He was so much fun to watch. He was putting on a show every night, circus shots, deep threes, whatever that may be. He was playing really well in Dallas. It's just they couldn't get it all together. And the end of the last season was a disaster. And if this season is another disaster, I don't know what to say. Like to be honest, I wouldn't even be shocked if I don't know about this year's trade deadline because they still gotta give Luka and Kyrie a little bit of time. But how much time is giving them too much time? What if a team like, who knows, Los Angeles or something, because they're always tied to Kyrie. Like, what if we're giving Dallas a decent trade package to trade for Kyrie, and it's not working and they're below 500 at the trade line. Like, did they pull the trigger and blow it up then? You know what I mean? There's so many what ifs with Kyrie Irving, and I think if he can stay healthy though, that's going to be massive. And people still got to remember he was an all-star game starter last season. He's still, regardless of how old he is, he's still playing at a very high level.
No, 100%. I mean, he's really not even that old. I'm just kind of forecasting into the future. At the end of the day, he's still like kind of in the middle of his prime here. He's 31. We haven't seen a lot of these guys really, when we're talking about the top echelon of NBA players, right? A lot of these guys, I mean, last well until, they're 35, 36. I mean, Chris Paul really isn't tailored off in production. I mean, he's a smaller guard, just like Kyrie. Maybe, going back to that playoff series with the Mavericks. I mean, before that, he had honestly been doing pretty decent that season. That'll definitely be intriguing going forward. But with the Mavericks, heading into this season, I think that we can all say that the biggest, area that they need to address is that rim protector, because as we referenced, Derek Lively is extremely promising, has all the intangibles to come, the next quote unquote Tyson Chandler, the guy that, can come in, be a weak side rim protector, stop any sort of penetration heading to the rim, grab boards, especially as he starts to develop, stronger. He's going to be a guy that's, going to be a point of stability and consistency, in my opinion. But obviously we saw some of the drawbacks, in summer league. He doesn't, he still needs to expand his game a lot more offensively. And, even on defense, he tends to sometimes be like out of position, sometimes just making those rookie mistakes. Do you think that Dallas's ceiling goes up drastically if they are able to, bring in a starting center like they've been rumored to throughout the offseason, like a Clint Capella, a guy, somebody like that? Or do you think that, that there's honestly maybe, the window is almost potentially closed for them to get a starting center after, this offseason? It might even be harder at the trade deadline. What do you think the Mavericks sort of direction is going to be with the starting center?
Yeah, I don't think that their window is closed, but I do think Dwight Powell will be starting center on opening night. I just think that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
But what could happen, which seems like the most likely avenue for them to get a starting center, is being the third team in one of those massive blockbusters, whether that's Dame or Harden or Siakam. That's the most likely way for them to get Capella. And it's been reported that it would be as the third team in the Siakam trade. And they'd love it if those talks ramped up and they were able to go get Capella in that deal, because they'd help make the salary work. Like Dallas would be a huge help to getting those two teams to make that trade help. So by no means, I don't think that the window is closed, but I think, who knows, if things aren't going the way that we fans want it to go, I could see them making a midseason trade, because they've made a midseason trade the past few years. Yeah, they seem to make a midseason trade almost every season. So if things aren't going well, I wouldn't be surprised if some parts start getting moved around, because the Luka clock is ticking. So that's what I have on that.
Yeah. So, to speak up on position, let's say the Mavericks don't go get anybody, they don't make that midseason trade. Do you, at any point in this season, this coming season, do you think that Derek Lively can become that starting center before the playoffs begin?
Wow, that's a great question. I think he can. I think he really can, just because he does everything that you want in a starting big.
Yeah.
But it's just not very often do those rookie bigs come in and be really good.
No, yeah, I would say I think he can. I do think that it might come at the expense of some losses. I think that, I think if you really wanted to thrust him in there day one, as the starting center, I think that, that would probably honestly, force his development to grow a little bit more exponentially than he, maybe would have otherwise, playing in the G League. And that's not to say that, the G League is not good for development or anything like that. But when you're getting that much experience of, against NBA bigs on a nightly basis, you're forced to adapt almost to an extent. Get with it, or you're gone. Yeah. So if they were to just throw him in throw him in the womb and just say, like, hey, go for it, bro. I do think that there's a chance that, yes, like he could end up being that guy by a certain point, but I do think it might just adversely affect the Mavericks. I don't think that, as excited as I am for Derek Lively, I do think that he is a guy, especially given, Mavericks fans sort of, how critical they are of some of these big men and stuff like that. I do think that he could make some very like rookie prone mistakes that, I don't think Mavericks fans would be too keen to if they are to, if he's going to get significant minutes right off the bat. And that's not a knock against him as a player. It's just, the Mavericks need to do a good job of, utilizing his minutes the best. But we'll see if he ends up showing, more, competence and ability to, stay at the NBA level. That would be huge for the Mavericks, and it would definitely be, it would be cost cutting for sure, because then they have the opportunity to allocate their limited resources and, draft capital elsewhere at the trade deadline to improve. And I mean, that would be huge, but we'll just have to see how that turns out. I will say that I think the Mavericks, to an extent, addressed almost all their areas of need this offseason, besides the starting center. And, that is very promising. But the only thing that I think scares me and is one of the reasons that I have the Mavericks kind of, in that 45 tier win range, is honestly, when you look across, the NBA landscape, particularly like the Western Conference, I do think the Mavericks have, just as much depth as the next team over. I just don't know if the Mavericks' depth is as significant as other teams, if that makes sense. I think that, you look at the, 1 through 8 rotation of like the Denver Nuggets, and I mean, you got like Aaron Gordon starting there. Like, I mean, there are dudes who are like, fringe all-stars ish on these other teams that are, their 4th and 5th best players. The Mavericks' 4th and 5th best players are like, Grant Williams, like Tim Hardaway Jr. It's not as, clear cut of, guys that are, going to be role players that are 100% role players that are contributing every night. The guy, Mavericks guys, are going to more often than not have more off games than some of those guys, more inconsistency. So that I think is kind of what's separating the Mavericks from that next tier right now, that and a starting center. You got any other thoughts, Jaren, just in terms of, future implications of the team or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, real quick, I wanted to touch up on that Derek Lively subject. I know that you had said if the Mavericks threw him in day one that, he might have a higher ceiling. I do kind of disagree with that, because oftentimes
I wouldn't say higher ceiling.
Not higher ceiling, but you did say that. Anyways, I would just say that, oftentimes with rookie centers, it does take a while. I think, it, especially with Derek Lively, because we saw how raw he was in that summer league through multiple games. Not saying he didn't get better, but because he did get a lot better throughout those games. But I think it's going to be maybe even a post All-Star break kind of time before we see him get a significant role within the Mavericks. I think he's going to take a while, but I think being alongside Kyrie, being alongside Luka, having all these guys next to him is going to definitely develop him. We saw Kyrie, pretty much take Nick Claxton's career to a next level. I think that we could see a similar thing with, Derek Lively, maybe not this year, but next year. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to Lively becoming a starting center at some point this season. I just don't know, especially through, I'll say the first 75% of the season. I don't know how comfortable I am with that, but I guess I'll leave that subject to that. But Noah, do you have anything real quick? Actually, what are the prediction seeds for the Mavericks this year?
What seed do I think though? Man, as much as I hate to say it, I think they're going to be in the play-in.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think they're going to be in the play-in. I think I'll go 7. You know what? I'll go 7. I think 7 that's where I'm going to go. But can I touch on Derek Lively real quick?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say with D-Live that I think the fact that he's going to be playing with the best passer he has ever played with in his life and Luka Doncic is going to be huge. Just because, I mean, he's catching so many lobs. Like you saw in Summer League, some lobs would just be a little bit out of reach for him. Luka and him are going to get on the same page, and it's going to be fun to watch. Like, that's immediately what I thought when he caught that first lob. And, I mean, he can fly. Like some of those 7-foot bigs, I mean, they're not as athletic. They can catch lobs, but it's kind of more on a dump off of he's cutting from baseline, just throw it up and he'll go get it and dunk it. But Lively can go get some crazy stuff, man. He's gonna be very fun to watch on this team. I think that, yeah, like you said, hopefully Luka and Kyrie can take his game to the next level, which I think they can. I think that I'm wondering if he's just going to have a similar trajectory, not trajectory, but season path that Jaden Hardy had, where he's kind of going off in the G League and then they bring him up and he has a role. But talking about this kind of is making my thoughts rotate over to what's Jaden Hardy's role going to look like now? You have Seth Curry and Tim Hardaway Jr. off the bench. Is Jaden Hardy just going to be sent to the end of the bench like he was at moments last year and not be able to contribute fully? Like, that's why I really like the Seth Curry signing, don't get me wrong, but it was a bit puzzling to me because they're like, okay, Tim's still on the roster, Jay Hardy's still on the roster. Like, how is this going to work? Curry's an undersized guard. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. But I'm thinking that D-Live, he's going to be good. He's going to be good. I'm not sure about right away, but I'm hoping that he can get NBA level minutes, right? Because what if he got better, like we said, consistently over summer league? What if he's probably grinding all this summer. What if the gap between him and DP isn't as big as we think?
Yeah.
October 25th. What if he grinds his butt off and they're going at it in practice and the gap really isn't that big? What if Rashawn Holmes, this is getting off topic a little bit, but we're going on, but what if Rashawn Holmes really, what if he wasn't bad in Sacramento? He was just behind Sabonis. Like, what if he wasn't bad? What if Rashawn can return to that 15-10 type of season that he had in Sacramento a few seasons ago? I think there's a lot of possibilities that we can have in the center role, but I'm thinking that Lively is going to be good. Do y'all think the gap between him and Dwight Powell is that big?
I don't think it's necessarily huge, because I think automatically we can say that, Derek Lively's a better rim protector than Dwight Powell. I do think easily. Easily. And that's like, mistakes aside, Dwight Powell, like, he tries as hard as he can, and I always give him, credit from the effort, perspective. But, Derek Lively, has intangibles that Dwight doesn't. Dwight does not have the longest wingspan for a center. I mean, he's bigger bodied, but he has a tendency to, kind of just get beat with his length and be out of position on defense. Never like has the best contests at the rim. So, I mean, automatically you're getting a better guy defensively. Derek Lively's big things obviously going to be, setting solid screens. We saw him in summer league. He would automatically just slip to the basket on a lot of pick and roll scenarios. Didn't try to set a good, stout screen. That's going to be a huge part, and just in terms of being a dynamic role man. Some of the more intriguing aspects, though, that I think could, really take him to the next level are, that passing out of the short roll, and as well as the 3-point shot. That's not even something that I would ever say like Tyson Chandler have. So, I do think that this is a guy that is a very, very intriguing player. And I think that he does do certain things better than Dwight. Obviously, we'll just have to see when training camp starts, if Derek Lively's offense is just that beyond, behind the curve, maybe Powell or Rashawn Holmes may need to start. But, like the point I was kind of making earlier was just, more so that if he does get those NBA minutes, it's not, I'm not saying necessarily that it's going to look good, but I do think that those NBA minutes are invaluable. So, the more that he plays in the league, the better that's, going to work towards, his development and stuff like that. So I'm extremely excited to see him heading into the Mavericks season. Because, just kind of the trend of our conversation that we're going, I'd say before we end the podcast here, we've been going pretty long. We appreciate your time, Noah.
Absolutely.
Let's pencil in the biggest wild card for the Mavericks seasons. A guy, or you could maybe even say something that happens. that could take the Mavericks from, our current, sort of, 7th seed. I think we're all kind of in that 44-ish wins, ninth to 6th seed, kind of, that's currently our projections for the team roughly. And as I would say, probably a lot of people that cover the Mavericks, would say that they're kind of, in that range right now. Who's the biggest wild card, or what is the biggest wild card this upcoming season for the Mavericks that would take them to the next level?
Great question. Let me think. I'll say biggest wild card. If Josh Green can take another leap, that's gonna be massive, because he's gonna be from what I understand and what I'm predicting, he's gonna be the solidified starter at the 3. What if imagine how many open looks he's gonna get? How many open looks that Reggie missed last season? What if Josh Green and Grant can just cash him in? You know what I mean? Like, I want him to be a little more confident, but if Josh Green's leap is exponential, that can take this team, I think, to the next level. So
I agree. What about for you, Jaren?
Look, this might be a little, delusional Mavs talk here, but for me, I think it has to fall within one of those guys in that wing position. I know me and Will have been really high on this guy, AJ Lawson. I think if AJ Lawson develops into anything that is comparable to a role player, that could definitely elevate some play. And then DJJ, I think that's a guy I confidently can think, I think he can guard 1 through 5, or at least 2 through 5. And to me, that's a guy I think that will have his best. He's going to have his best, he's being surrounded by the best cast that he's ever had in his career with Luka and Kyrie. Luka's going to only make him that much better. He's going to be an insane lob threat as on those backdoor cuts, on those, sort of screen doors, whatever it is. He's going to be an insane offensive player from that perspective. Defense kind of speaks for itself. I know it's kind of underrated in that perspective, but a lengthy guy. I think, to me, or for me, I think if the Mavericks are going to have any wild card guy, and I like that Josh Green answer, but if the Mavericks are going to have any wild card guy, it's going to have to come off the bench. And I think that DJJ, Omax, one of those wing guys, Dante Exum, if you want to throw him in there, it's going to have to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
So I mean, just getting like more, more burst out of anybody. I do like your answer though, Noah, because I mean, Josh Green starting, like, we know he's going to get a lot of minutes next year. So him taking that next step as a player would most certainly be huge. But no, I mean, to Jaren's point, like if one of, say, Grant Williams, I mean, no, not Grant Williams, but one of Derek Jones Jr., one of AJ Lawson, one of Omax, one of those guys, somehow slips through the cracks and ends up being a lot better than we thought. I mean, that could definitely improve the trajectory of this team a lot. So that it'll be a really fun upcoming season that we got. We'll have tons of content for you guys on all platforms, but we did want to make a special announcement because hopefully if Noah is to join us again, the next time he will be joining us will actually be live, all 3 of us together. We are going to be going to the San Antonio Spurs game with Noah, the home, or the season opener, not the home opener. Seeing Kyrie and Luka versus Victor Wembanyama. So Noah is getting a chance to cover that. He's going to do it. He's going to be in the media, and he's going to be covering plenty of Mavs home games this upcoming season for you guys. So we are really excited about that. That'll be a fun opportunity. We talked about this before the show even started. We actually haven't even met, and Jaren and I have been writing for the Smoking Cuban for, I believe, like a month and a half now, something like that. So yeah, we're really excited. Make sure to go check out everything over there at thesmokingcuban.com, where you can see all 3 of our articles posted. And make sure, obviously, as far as the podcast is concerned, to get at us on YouTube, like, and subscribe, of course, and comment down below. Oh, geez, bad voice crack. Comment down below. Who do you think is going to be the biggest wild card for the Mavericks this upcoming season? And for any of you guys listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other listening platform, we really do appreciate your time. Give us a review, give us a 5-star rating if you so please. We really appreciate any feedback that we can get. But Noah, we really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. You have any final words for the audience?
Man, final word. I see our Zoom timer is going a little low, but I had
Yeah.
one question when I heard AJ Lawson. So I'm just gonna
okay. Let's
real
dial
quick.
that. Let's do it.
Hopefully we have a second, just 1 second.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Who is gonna get the final two-way spot?
Oh.
I'm Jelly Walker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll go. Yeah, we'll go. We'll go Jelly Walker. There's 3 spots, right?
But
Yeah,
at the same time,
Yeah.
I would be hesitant to say that they'd carry both him and Mike Miles in a two-way position because they both got guards. So, but I mean, I just think off talent alone, hey, I'm just gonna say Jelly Walker because when I went to summer
Wise camp.
Greg Brown III is up
could.
there though. Greg Brown III is
yeah.
up there.
Yeah.
But I'm only gonna say Jelly Walker because when I saw that, I mean, my first summer league experience, that guy made it very special. Just the last, 2 Mavericks games, Jaden Hardy wasn't even playing. I mean, he was hyper efficient. He's like literally like my height. He's like 5'10", 5'11". He went out there and put on a show. And I mean, he against Kobe Buffkin, sauced him up, and Jarvis Walker. I'm not gonna forget that. So I'm gonna roll with him.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, who do you think, Noah?
Man, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna go Greg Brown or Joe. What is it? Wieskamp from Iowa. Yeah. I'm gonna go either one of them, man. They need more wing depth, and Greg Brown has good size too. I don't see them carrying Mike Miles and Jelly.
Yeah,
especially
I don't.
How many
I don't
guards
see it
they
either.
have?
That's just
So
my
I could see. I could
Yeah.
see Greg Brown. I don't know. I want to see Greg Brown in training camp, see how he's developed because he's still so raw. But yeah, man, I'm thinking it's one of those wings.
Most definitely. But we appreciate you guys for listening thus far. Hopefully, we can get some great digs this off season when we get to see, we get a chance to interview Greg Brown or Joe Wieskamp. That would just be peak content right there. So, but no, in all seriousness, it was a really fun episode. Glad you guys got to come on. Noah, we're definitely excited to have you back in future episodes. Extremely excited for that October 25th game versus the Spurs that we'll be going to. Smoking Cuban, heading to San Antonio. This has been the Mainstream Mavs podcast. We appreciate you guys for listening. It's been a fun one, and we will catch you in the next one.